The high-stakes Trump-Putin meeting concluded in Alaska with no significant breakthrough towards peace in Ukraine. The meeting was followed by a joint press conference, but neither leaders took questions from the media. Trump and Putin addressed the press, where the two leaders underlined the need to secure peace in Ukraine. However, Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated Russia's red lines. Putin emphasized that the root causes of the conflict must be eliminated and all of Russia's concerns must be taken into account.
We're convinced that in order to make the settlement lasting and long-term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes of that conflict. And we've said it multiple times, to consider all legitimate concerns of Russia and to reinstate a just balance of security in Europe and in the world on the whole. And I agree with President Trump, as he has said today, that naturally the security of Ukraine should be ensured as well. Naturally, we're prepared to work on that.
Putin red-flagged possible attempts by Europe and Ukraine to sabotage the peace talks and added that he hoped there would be no backroom dealings or provocations by either side to derail the talks.
I would like to hope that the agreement that we've reached together will help us bring closer that goal and will pave the path towards peace in Ukraine. We expect that Kiev and European capitals will perceive that constructively and that they won't throw a wrench in the works. They will not make any attempts to use some backroom dealings to conduct provocations to torpedo the nascent progress.
Donald Trump said that the meeting with Putin was highly productive and several points were agreed upon by the two leaders, but a few are left. He also said that he would call up NATO and Zelensky, and ultimately it is up to them now to agree.
I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting.
The press conference came after nearly 3 hours of talks between the two sides. However, the meeting was not a one-on-one, as was planned earlier. It was instead a 3-on-3 meeting, with Trump being accompanied by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and on the other side, Putin was joined by his aide Ushakov and Foreign Minister of Russia Sergei Lavrov. And to discuss this further, I'm now being joined by Ben Aris. He's joining me from Berlin. He's the founder and editor-in-chief of BNE Intellinews and former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph. Ben, thanks so much for making time for us and joining us here. Let's get right into it. A lot of analysts are seeing it as a hands-down win for Putin all the way. He's come in, he's got a royal treatment, the red carpet was laid out, he was all smiles, gets to speak first, speaks more than Trump, rarely happens with any other leader that we've seen so far. And, you know, that line that the root causes of the conflict need to be addressed. Is there anything from the body language or the words that were spoken that gives any kind of a change in Russia's stance in what they demand so far?
No, there's no change in Russian stance at all. This turned into a huge circus, and of course it was a major media event, the first time that Putin and Trump have met since the war started. And if you cut away all the noise, I mean, what Putin was basically saying is that he specifically talked about his root causes that have to be addressed in the war. And this is code word for, I have my demands, and they are no NATO for Ukraine. They are international recognition of Russia's sovereignty over the 5 regions that it's occupied. And there are various other aspects, such as reducing the size of the Ukrainian military should there be a ceasefire. And what Putin was saying here was that none of those demands have changed. And his basic position is that we're winning on the battlefield. I mean, the reports coming out of Donbass, particularly around the key town of Pokrovsk, are really bad. The Russians have made advances and the town's close to falling. And if that falls, that threatens the supplies of the entire Donbass front line, defensive line for the Ukrainian forces. And as you mentioned, Trump was actually very subdued because he went into this. I mean, if we go right back to January, he promised to finish this war in 24 hours. And here we are 6 months later, and he's made no progress whatsoever. And he was unable to, I think that's the takeaway, that Trump was talking about 100% tariffs on Russia's main customers for oil. That would have gutted the Russian budget of money in order to pay for this. That's fallen away. Those tariffs have not been imposed. There was 25% on India, but those have been delayed for 21 days, so there's some wiggle room for a deal. The tariffs that were proposed to hit China, its main customer, those have been put off until November. And Trump has put no sanctions whatsoever on Russia, even in the Liberation Day tariffs that were announced in April. Everyone else got 10%, Russia got 0%. So Trump has put no pressure on Putin at all. And here we are in the first face-to-face where they're actually bargaining. And Trump has come out with none of his heavy guns. He's come out with no threats, no sanctions, no tariffs. And he just sat there and listened to Putin, who repeated his demands that Ukraine should, in effect, capitulate and give up to all of the demands that Putin's making. And that position hasn't changed. So in that sense, it was a complete failure. I will add, though, the success of this, the fear that Backroom, that Ukraine had going into these talks, was that Trump and Putin would thrash out some sort of formula, some sort of ceasefire deal, and then present it jointly to Ukraine and tell it, take it or leave it.
There was no announcement of that ceasefire as was being expected at the end of that meeting. But Ben, let me just join 2 points which happened separately. One, of course, is what Trump said, that he made it clear that it's now up to Ukraine. Later on in that interview with Fox News, he said the same. Europe needs to step up. They need to get involved. And now the onus is on Ukraine. He also said that there was 1 or 2 major points which the two leaders did not agree upon. And if I were to combine what we just discussed in the first response of yours, of what Putin's stance has been so far, just like it was in 2022, would that really mean that one sticking point is ceding territory in Ukraine? Because now it's up to Ukraine to agree or disagree to that. So it's pretty much Ukraine to decide what they want to give up.
I think there's 2 sticking points. I mean, as you rightly say, Zelensky has said adamantly, we're not giving up any territory at all. We just can't do that because of the constitution. And, it's a red line for him. He's not going to go there. But I think the other sticking point is the Ukrainian position, backed by the EU, is that no talks on ending the war can begin until there is first an unconditional ceasefire. And Zelensky's been very clear about that. And I think that's one of the points that Putin is refusing to accept. And he's making, as I say, progress on the battlefield. He doesn't seem the point in halting the hostilities, giving the Ukrainian forces a chance to regroup, resupply, in order to continue the fight should talks fail. That he wants to continue fighting and do the deals in parallel, whereas Ukraine wants to stop the fighting and start the talks. And I think these 2 points is where they've got stuck, because there's no middle ground in these 2 positions. And Zelensky's insisting on a ceasefire. Europe is insisting on a ceasefire before anything else happens.
And just hours before that meeting, in Alaska, the bombings were continuing, and the fighting continues on the battlefront. Russia is making more and more incursions. The longer this goes on, the worse it will get for Ukraine, because Trump has pretty much made it clear, now the onus is on you. You decide what you want to do. And it's pretty clear what Russia wants. Russia hasn't budged an inch from what they had demanded all those years ago when, it all started in 2022. We'll need to wait and watch what kind of statements come out and what really happens on the battlefield to kind of assess where this is really going. And what about the next meeting, which may just happen in Moscow? Another, a MasterCard that Putin throws right at the end. Trump seemed quite surprised, but this has been on the cards. And Trump had suggested a trilateral. Putin suggests it's going to happen in Moscow. Imagine that, Zelensky going to Moscow, and what kind of dealings those are going to be. But at this point, it seems like bad news for Europe and Ukraine, as what it seems, because Putin was all smiles. At least that's what we've seen so far. Ben, thanks so much for joining us. Always lovely speaking with you and getting your insights into how things are unfolding. There will be lots more to discuss. We'd love to have you on the show again.
Look forward to it.